at least. So officially, once again, welcome to 2020, the IIID Design Webinar Series, conducted jointly by 7 chapters of IIID, that's Delhi, Goa, Jaipur, Mangalore, Coimbatore, Chandigarh, and Mumbai. I'd like to thank my respective chapter chairpersons, Siddharth Nayak at Goa, Anshuman Sharma at Jaipur, Leena Nimbalkar at Mumbai, Manmohan Khanna, and now I believe Ashima at Chandigarh, Mohammad Nisar at Mangalore, and Geeta Karthikeyan at Coimbatore. And also a big thank you to our head office, Jabin Zacharias, our president, Jignesh Modi, honorary secretary and mentor of the Delhi chapter, and Tanuja BK, president-elect, also from Delhi. I would like to take this time to thank our sponsors, Wellspun Flooring, who supported us through the entire month, and they are sponsors for the month of May. Rishu, while Sunita is coming on board, if you can run the video of Wellspun, that would be very nice. With sound, please.
From humble beginnings in 1985, today, Wellspun Group takes pride in being one of the world's largest home textile manufacturers and large diameter pipe makers, and finds a place on India's Fortune 500 list too. All thanks to creating category-defining products. And we aim to replicate that in flooring through Wellspun Flooring. Just the thought of dust, noise, mess, and the time it takes to change floors, along with the lack of exciting designs, forced people to resist a change in flooring. Not anymore. Wellspun Flooring has introduced innovative products with new age, personalized, and exciting designs. So be it a new space or an old floor, we are all about change made easy. We have our innovative products to speak for us. Wellspun Flooring's click and lock tiles, with their unique click and lock technology, are a revolution in the flooring segment. For those looking for comfort of convenient tile form, our carpet tiles are the right fit. If people want flooring with a seamless charm, they don't have to look any further than our wall-to-wall carpets. Or if they wish for something that looks like real grass, or even better, greens is what we have for them. And with our breaking fusion floors, customers can turn designers by mixing and matching products and designs. Get set for a revolution in flooring with Wellspun Flooring.
Okay guys, we are back with Sunita still not being able to log on. So let me first start with Sonali at least, because we have almost 200 people waiting for us, and those others on Facebook Live too. So Rishu, I'm going to introduce Sonali first now, so we'll just change that pattern. So, and anyway, I have this great opportunity. I seem to draw the short straw every time. I'm supposed to introduce people who need no introduction. So let me try the difficult bit again. Sonali Rastogi, she's an internationally renowned architect and the founder partner of Morphogenesis, one of the largest architectural firms in India, and listed amongst the top 100 architectural firms globally. She is a leading speaker on housing and urbanism, having lectured at numerous reputed universities and conferences worldwide. Working across a diverse canvas ranging from architecture to urban design, landscape, and interior design, Sonali is passionately interested in the materiality and craft in architecture and is deeply invested in the detail of building. A fellow of the Indian Institute of Architects, the Royal Society of Arts UK, and a chartered member of the Royal Institute of British Architects, she also extends her impact on the built environment as a council member of the DUAC, the Delhi Urban Arts Commission. A winner of over 100 prestigious awards, her works have been featured in over 850 publications, both national and international. You're all seeing her PPT being run on the screen and tells you that the caliber of the work she and her husband Manit have done over the years. Also one of the oldest members of IIID Delhi, So thank you, Sonali. You've been part of almost every big event we've done. And now the webinar is the next big thing. So thank you for joining this also. So we are still waiting for Sunita to join in.
May I suggest that if the Zoom link is not working, if she would actually, instead of clicking on the link, if she would go to Zoom US and put the numbers in, that might work.
Oh, she's back again. Let's see. Let's one final try.
Koilika, can you hear?
No.
Can you hear?
Is your mic disabled by any chance?
No, you're on mute. You are on mute.
I can unmute them. That's not a problem.
They are on mute, Hemant.
Muted by host, it's saying.
No, it's not. Now you unmuted. I can hear you. I can hear you. Oh.
Hemant, you are silent now.
No, I'm silent because I'm not speaking.
Ah.
I'm waiting for Sunita to join us. But if she can't, let's do one thing. Let's start with the first question. And by the time I think you give that answer, hopefully she'll be with us.
Maybe somebody can call them on the side and walk them through, maybe downloading using the Zoom US version and then putting the numbers in.
Ravi, could you do that, please, since you're also online?
I think they're just trying to get back.
Ravi, you're muted, so you're talking, but we can't hear you.
Hello. I think she's trying to connect.
Yeah, can you do one thing? Can you give her a call and just guide them through somehow?
Okay.
Even if they connect on the mobile phone, it will work.
Okay.
Yeah, mobile phone would be a better idea, I think.
I've done enough webinars on the mobile phone nowadays so that literally in a car while we're traveling.
Hi. Hi.
Yes, we can hear you.
Now
Can you hear us, Sunita?
I'm very sorry for the terrible glitch that has
No
occurred.
problem at all. Okay, welcome Sunita. Can you hear us perfectly now?
I can hear you now. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. So Sunita, I've just changed the order a bit. I introduced Sonali while we were waiting for you. So now we start with your introduction.
Absolutely. In fact, I apologize. In fact, I was going to send you a message had it not happened in one more second that please carry on without me and let it be a dialogue between Sonali and you.
I wouldn't miss having a chat with you for anything.
Sonali, wonderful to have a chat with you. You know, I always enjoy speaking with you.
Oh, so do I very much.
Okay, so let me officially introduce once again a lady who needs no introduction, Sunita Kohli. She's a globally recognized. Rishu, can you run the PPT and along with it so that not that people need to know, but still it'll be good. So Sunita is a globally recognized national award-winning interior designer, furniture manufacturer, and architectural restorer since 1971. Her professional portfolio includes several significant public and heritage buildings, hotels, houseboats, forts, palaces, libraries, museums, and select residences in India, Egypt, Pakistan, Bhutan, England, and Sri Lanka. She is the president of K2 India, an award-winning architectural and design firm, whose CEO is her daughter, Kohli, who we also saw on screen just now trying to set up the video. Sunita is the former chairperson of the School of Planning and Architecture, SPA Bhopal, where she championed the first conference in South Asian vernacular architecture. She has lectured and presented papers in several universities in the UK, the US, Southeast Asia, and earlier for the Millennium Book on New Delhi by the Oxford University Press. She wrote an extended essay on the planning of New Delhi and Sir Edward Lutyens. and is considered the India expert on Lutyens' work in New Delhi. Currently, she has 4 books under preparation and publication, and she has recently co-authored the Lucknow Cookbook with her mother, Chand Soor, who is a legendary cook. The Lucknow Cookbook has been launched in almost every premier literary festival in India, and its most recent launch was in Singapore at the Festival of Indian Arts and Ideas. In September 2019, Sunita was the chief curator of the Times of India first design event, I believe it was called TOIDX, which was a 2-day festival of art, craft, and architecture and design etymologies. She is the editor of Kala, an anthology of essays on contemporary design aesthetics, which was first launched in Dubai. And of course, in 1992, years ago, Sunita was conferred with the Padma Shri for contribution to national life in the field of interior design and architectural restoration by the President of India in New Delhi. The same year, she was presented the Mahila Shiromani Award by Mother Teresa, of course now Saint Teresa, in Kolkata. And most recently, in October 2019, Sunita was presented with the prestigious Hall of Fame Award. And ever since the Architectural Digest A+D 50 awards has been constituted, K2 India has figured on every award list of Architectural Digest India. So that is and that believe me is the short introduction for Sunita Kohli. The long one went into 4 pages, so I've chosen not to read it. And
Thank you.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure to have you, Sunita and Sonali. It's been a real pleasure having both of you. And I would like to start with you, Sunita, the first question, since we've lost a little bit of time. So from the 1970s, you have designed a wide range of projects, and you have been the only such designer in the field, man or woman. How do you manage to handle this wide range of projects?
Mine is always, mine was an unplanned profession, and very much like, and I've never studied design. So I want to state that very clearly, very quickly. And particularly in the context of today, where there is a notification that you don't have to study architecture to be an architect. I have to say I do not quite agree with that, because times have moved on, times have changed. And it cannot be like my time, because I was such a strongly motivated autodidact, that it was possible for me to research, to do it. And speaking of Lutyens' Delhi, where I've done extensive work, he not only did not study architecture, but he never even went to school. So how did I manage all this? Well, the first project came in the mid-70s, which was a hotel for the Oberois in Khajuraho, where I really learned on the shop floor. And then in our profession, you are only as good as your last project. That was very well accepted. Then it went on to other hotels, Bhubaneswar, etc. Then work in Egypt, in Kuwait, in Iraq. And that's a hotel boat on the Nile that I did out of 200 odd hotel boats. That won the best first prize. And it was very different to every other hotel boat that was cruising on the Nile. And of course, you know, then when you see pictures like this image, we worked by hand on blueprints. Everything was done with pen. The world has changed today because of AutoCAD and everything that you can do on the computer. Ours was a very hand-done era. So therein lies the difference between when I started and what happened now. And so you see the built reality from what was just a cross section. And of course, you know, working with, I was very fortunate that from the late 70s, I was working with major international companies, people like who designed, Swemab, the company that designed this boat is Swedish. And this is a boat that we conceived together right from the beginning. So it was totally different to any other luxury cruiser on the Nile, because it did not have small portholes, but these ceiling to floor windows. So you could be on your balcony and you could cruise looking at the Nile on either side. So there were several firsts like that one was responsible for. And then this is Bhubaneswar. This is, sorry, I beg your pardon, Bhutan. It's the parliament building that I had done, which I was responsible for the exteriors, the interiors, and which is totally, it was totally conceived with their own design traditions. And it's used state of the art, translating facilities, lighting, etc. But the entire building can only be in Bhutan. And that's the way I like to work, because, Bhutan would not be the same if you tried to do a Manhattan place, something which was sensible for Manhattan. I mean, and this is, that was in 1990, and this is in 2010 for the SARC conference that both Kohelika and I were brought back to redesign many areas. This is the VVIP lounge. So I think I've been able to work on several projects together because I am not a multitasker. I have to admit, I like to concentrate on one project. I might be working on 10 projects simultaneously, but my research is totally concentrated when I'm working for those couple of hours on that particular project. I'm cut off from everything else. And that's the way I've always done it. I mean, here's Hyderabad house, which I totally restored from the attic to the ground floor in 9 months, and it was completely closed for this. And when I'm saying restoration, it means looking at all the services, all the stone, and last of all came the furniture, the interiors, the artifacts. This courtyard is because there was no courtyard. So in the style of Lachyan's, one put in this courtyard after having studied how he had handled courtyards. So that in 2 years' time, I mean, the best conservation work is where in 2 years' time, nobody even knows that there was the intervention of an architect and or a designer. That to me is a successful conservation project. It's different when one is designing hotels, because then you're doing this. This is Rashtrapati Bhavan. Again, over 5 years, I had completely restored it from outside, inside, all 360 rooms and lodges. I do not know I have not been inside for a while. My last working there was, I haven't worked continuously, but in phases, but this was when one had done, it's a stock picture, but when one had worked 5 years on it. And we had looked at every single detail. There was a committee that had been set up with, by government, which included the late architect Charles Correa and the late landscape architect Professor Shahid. And out of that, I was selected. Somebody actually has to do the drawings and has to physically do the work. But it was always with joint consultations. And here, of course, whilst doing this, what one tried to do is to Indianize it to the extent that every fabric that was used, firstly, was woven by master craftsmen, and only hand-woven fabric was used, not using any mill-made fabric. Every artifact that was placed, that was brought in new, had all been done by master craftsmen who had won the President's Award. So this was a statement that one was trying to make in a building like Rashtrapati Bhavan. And that was 1986. This was set up, the panel drawing room, for when Mr. Obama came here. And I've always tried to use whatever is in the house, wherever it is, whether it's the old Masuli Patnam carpets, getting them clean, as much of the furniture. Only the sofas one had done 20 years before, and they were reupholstered, again in hand-woven fabric. This is South Block, which I have extensively restored. I mean, the PMO, which I had restored completely, including the courtyard, which had concrete structures in it, those were removed. And I'm happy to say, because it was done for the Prime Minister of India, not for any individual, that the PMO from what I can make out from pictures. I haven't gone; it remains the same throughout. And this spot cochere that you see is really the entrance to the Ministry of External Affairs, which I also did. And the extreme left is the Ministry of Defense, which I also had done. I purposely brought this in because I knew I'd be in conversation with Sonali, and I had done the interiors of this in 1990. This is, of course, the facade, which was designed by architect was Charles Courier, who I knew extremely well. But the facade was designed by another great friend called Howard Hodgkin. And this is the shadow of a giant banyan tree. So one had done the interiors, and I'm happy to note that after 25 years, British Council and the British government decided that it needed a change, and they went to Morphogenesis. So I think this is how it goes from one generation to the next, because Sonali is a generation younger than me.
I'm not a generation.
No,
A quarter
Sonali,
generation maybe.
yeah. So I was happy to, I said, this is a joint project. So it was an opportunity to show it.
That's very kind.
Thank you, Sunita. That was wonderful. In fact, one thing I'm going to do off the record is I'm going to ask you to try and organize a visit for IIID members to the Rashtrapati Bhavan sometime whenever it's convenient to you, if it's possible.
You're asking the wrong person right now, I think. I think there are many other people who know the president, who can get it done, or who know secretary to the president.
But it's always nice to go there with the designer. No point going there with just walking in and seeing the place.
No, I'm very happy to be the guide through. I mean, I know Rashtrapati Bhavan literally like the palm of my hand, because it's a highly, highly researched project. I have looked at every single drawing in England that he made for the building.
Oh, wonderful.
So
let's try and work out a visit there, and we'll take you along as the guide, because
sure.
And now, Sonali, coming to that, now you've seen whatever Sunita has done, and I'm sure you're familiar with the work. But I'm not going to talk about the future. And now with this COVID pandemic that's happening and it's changing our whole everything, what according to you is the way forward for us? Is it vernacular or is it technology? Because everyone's talking about technology nowadays.
Architecture and design per se has always been the output of humanity for humanity, right? So I think at all points, something that is derived out of its context or refers to its history is a regionalist or vernacular, or should be at least inspired by vernacular. And technology is always the technology available at that time when the project is being conceived. So to me, the two are not separate entities. They are two parameters which operate in every paradigm. And with the pandemic, I think there are two things that I strongly feel about this pandemic. Firstly, this pandemonium of the corona has been created by humans. It has been created by not respecting the boundaries of that should be respected between nature and habitation, between species within habitation. So I think number one, to think about the environment is even more critical. This is an example. I mean, we can keep denying that there's no climate change and so on and so forth, but this is there. It's democratically affecting everyone. So I think this is the time for not just a paradigm shift, but a paradigm change. And in that, still vernacular or technology to me is not a question, that is a given. It is the parameters to think about. Now, this particular project that you're showing is an off-grid net zero facility we just finished for a luxury brand for Forest Essentials. And this has no electricity, no water taken from anywhere, and it has zero waste that leaves the site. Okay, and it, on a hill of Lodzi, it supports 800 people that directly or indirectly that live on the entire hill. And 64 people were used to build this building, of which 60 came from this hill. So, and this is an example of off-grid architecture. And so for me, yes, it is vernacular inspired. Yeah, it supports the community. So it's as relevant here or today as it would have been 50 years ago or will be 50 years later. So this is more views. So, I mean, almost a large amount of ingredients that go into the forest essential products come from the hill. Now this is, okay, now you're talking about technology. So whilst the appearance of the previous one may be that it's more vernacularly inspired, this is a project which actually the images are from 4 months before it actually finished. This is Zydus Corporate Headquarters. Now this is actually inspired, this is a doubly curving wall which faces the west. Now it faces the west to be sustainable because it's one of the hottest parts of the country. The climate, the temperatures go above 45. We know we must put a blank face to the west side, and which is exactly what has been done. So this building was inspired from the Kansaras. So it's a doubly curving surface made out of metal, which is what you see over there. And the mirror work, which is these images, because I guess they're during construction. When you see this, these little dots that you see are actually mirrors, and they're prismatic and they catch the sunlight as the sun moves across the facade. So this comes from the Bhungas of South Gujarat. And the fact that people move in between walls, I mean, the entire spine is in between walls, comes from Pavagadh Fort, which is many kilometers down the same road, where people move to be protected from, in that case, from the enemy, but in this case, from the western sun. People move from within the ramparts. So there are many ways of understanding vernacular. Vernacular understands where the sun is, where the wind is, what the resources are. You know, and that is as relevant to a building which is like this building, which is completely embedded with technology. And of course, for me, wherever I work, not daylight, more than 90% of the building, that's the target we set for ourselves. Any building we work with has to be more than 90% daylit. And this building is 90% daylit. And you could see in that last picture, the doubly curved kind of forms inspired from the Kansaras.
Amazing, especially that what you've done on the western wall, it's become a work of art in itself.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Sunita, now I'm going to bring you back to the one controversial line that you mentioned, and we love controversy in IIID, so we'll ask you that question. You've been the chairperson of SPA Bhopal. So what are your views on? Oh, Sunita's gone.
Oh.
Video's shut off.
No,
she's
can you
hear me? Sunita,
I can hear you now.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, Sunita, I was saying that I'm going to take you back to a controversial question, that a controversial statement that you mentioned in your initial opening remarks. Since you're the chairperson of SPA Bhopal, I just wanted to ask, what is your views on the new notification that there is no formal degree in architecture required to practice architecture? Would you care to comment on that?
I don't think that should be there and I'm saying that in spite of the fact that I never studied design, I studied literature. I have a Visharad in Hindustani classical music, and I became a designer by accident. But I'm a serious autodidact. I seriously studied design. I do not think that I mean, if any one of my various children were to ask me that can we also like you be a designer or an architect without studying design, I would say absolutely not. Because I think there are technologies, there is engineering, there is so much that you study when you are doing a formal course of 5 years. Of course, having been my experience of having been a chairperson of the School of Planning and Architecture, I'm proud to say that there were several firsts that I brought in, including a great emphasis on the study of the humanities, because and also the first vernacular conference of of Southeast Asia, where 400 delegates participated. And this was in collaboration or in partnership with Manav Sangrahalaya. So there was that, and out of which 190 delegates were vernacular architects. And there is, they have a knowledge which we can only aspire to learn. And I think that more and more architectural schools should be teaching this. Unfortunately, so many architectural schools have just mushroomed and mushroomed without maybe what the SPAs offer, which are National Institutes of Excellence. But so what they are being taught, because there's a lot of learning and education that can happen, which is outside the studio, outside your classes. And abroad, I find, having been familiar with several major institutions of design and architecture abroad, having lectured there or spoken there, or one's own daughter having gone there, is that it's not only that they study architecture or design, but they also study, they can have other subjects like the management of architectural sites or the psychology of architecture. I mean, there are so many different disciplines within the larger discipline of architecture. And of course, as I mentioned before, I never studied it, but I feel, and I can't be blasé about it, I'm extremely proud that and honored that I was the first person to be bestowed the Padma Shri in this discipline of design and architectural restoration. So there was that, but I do not think that this is the way forward. Lutyens himself, who designed the 32 miles, which comprise what is known as the Lutyens Bungalow Zone and New Delhi, he himself, for various reasons, which because of ill health mainly, he could not even go to school, leave alone architectural school. And yet his contemporaries say that he knew some secrets of our art that were not known to us. And I think also it's very important that people should recognize, particularly young people, that is design and architecture for them, because it's not something just to do. I mean, you have to have a passion for it. You have to also have, it's also a hunar, like musicians are born and then you can hone that skill, because there's so much else to do in design. So first must come the recognition of that is design and architecture for you. Otherwise, there are so many other avenues in design, if you're passionate about it, that are also open to young people. That's my view on it.
Thanks a lot, because we at IIID have this problem, because many of us are not architects. I'm not. And if you're not an architect, to be an interior designer, there is no statutory body in this country. Unlike the Council of Architecture, there isn't a Council of Design. So everyone and his uncle today is an interior designer and a fashion designer and a product designer and whatever else.
Well, actually now, Hemant, having said that, given this current notification that has come, actually that's no problem at all. But I mean, I agree with Sunita ji on so many of the things that she said about people who train themselves. I mean, there are many other architects, Ando for one, who was a boxer and then became an architect. So because it is a profession so close to humanity, okay, it's not a surprise that there are many legends that are self-trained, okay, but that is, in my opinion, true for any profession that serves humanity. For example, a doctor can be self-trained, okay. There are enough Hakims who would be self-trained, and before the MBBS degrees and all that came. And there are enough lawyers who can study, I mean, who don't have to be lawyers per se, but can study. When people fight for their own rights, they can study and know what is required in more depth than anyone who represents them. So there are so many professions. There are singers, dancers who are self-trained. And they're better than people who've been to years and years of schooling and education. But I think what an architectural education, for example, gave me besides the title of an architect, because I studied in two universities with a very different pedagogy. So I went to School of Planning and Architecture, Delhi, and then I went to the Architectural Association, London. And I went to what a lot of people say, I happened to be at the Architectural Association at the sort of the golden days of the AA. And where the current names, Rempula, Zahadi, they were Ben Van Berkel, they were all professors over there at that time. And John Fraser and Baram Shridhar, like or the so-called star architects, which is the term I suppose that is used nowadays for them, were all professors around me at that time. And the two, what it gives you is a meta language. It gives you ability to process things in a certain way. It allows you to choose the analytical path that works for you. Okay, it allows you a common language. Okay, and I think the discourse and debate is one of the key things that takes design forward. Okay, now it allows you, much like when you're born and you learn the language of the community and the family around you so that you can communicate with them. At the least, what an education does, at the least, gives you a shortcut to that language. Okay, so the meta language of a university and the pedagogy of the university, I think, are tools to sharpen your mind for design thinking. I don't think a university ever teaches you a final product, in my opinion, or at least a good university should not be teaching you the final product. Nobody can teach that. Okay, but it's a template. They put a template for analytical thinking. If you are of a research orientation, then that, so it's just a template that it provides you. And it provides you with peers and mentors. You know, of course, there's nothing to say that you can't find them in the world without the university. Of course you can. But it provides you with that whole environment. It provides you with, like, I've communicated, I got my love of structural engineering from actually being at the A. Because I met a structural engineer who inspired me a lot, and actually I thought was talking more design thinking than a lot of architects I knew. And to date, I have a love of structural engineering, and I work really hard to understand each and every aspect of it that is really relevant to my projects. So as much as I am a proponent of that, a lot can be done which is self-driven, because even if you can have the best education in the world, if the drive and motivation to learn is not there, then design is not the profession for you. Because you learn with every project. You learn with every project.
I agree with Sonali, because, you know, she's taken both points of view, which I think are important to know. And for somebody like me, why am I so research oriented? It's because I did a PhD in English literature on Christopher Marlowe, which I did not complete, but that taught me how to research. Yeah. And of course, the other ways that you build up your visual vocabulary is by studying, by reading, and by traveling. And I was fortunate that I had parents who took us from a very early age. And that's what I've tried to do with my children and grandchildren and things. Because, you know, I often told them, look, they would say that we are the only ones who haven't been to a Disney World. I said, sorry, I'm not taking you. You know, I'll take you to China, I'll take you to Bhutan, I'll take you to Egypt, but I'm not taking you to Disney World. Of course, it's another story. I ended up, when I going to the one in Europe, and realized, my God, look at the input of design that has gone into creating this theme park. Any case, so I think that I really think, just to finish this, I think that is very important to study design and architecture, or both, or, you know, have us in England. You can, in America, you can also do a second degree. You know, you can do things like photography with it. You can do things like carpentry with it. But I think it's very important to have that, but also to realize within oneself that, is this what I can be passionate about for the rest of my life? I think that is the key.
Thanks, because we as I told you, IIID is stuck with this, and it's become, the Supreme Court judgment has been controversial. A lot of objections to that, lot of things. Even, I believe even an appeal is being thought of.
Mhm.
Anyway, let's see what the audience goes. We have a little poll. Like Rishu, if you can run the poll, please, and see what the audience thinks, whether it is a good decision or not. That's poll number 3, row degree in architecture. Absolutely. Sonali and Sunita, you can vote if you like.
I vote for disagree. Architecture degree is a must. How do I vote? I don't know, but
Yeah.
okay.
Well, 84% seem to agree with you. So,
No, because when one has the ability to be educated in a particular discipline, one must do it. I mean, everybody is not. It doesn't happen by chance that you know.
Also,
Say
exceptions cannot define the rule. If the
yes,
rule, exceptions cannot define the rule.
I
Exceptions
agree.
are
so
exceptions.
the final results are out. It's 82% who agree that an architectural degree is a must.
Yes,
So it's always nice to know what our audience is thinking because they're listening to you live. And they can
Yes.
always make up their mind or change their mind. And Vishu, while we're at it, we had a very good discussion on vernacular and technology. Can you run that poll also, please? And just see what the audience thinks about that. Let the audience quickly in 30 seconds give us a poll on this.
This is a, you know, you can't be one or the other.
Let's see. Let's see
I
what the audience
agree.
says.
It has to be. You can't vote like this because it has to be technology and the vernacular. I mean, you can't have either or. That's not how simplistic life or architecture or design is.
Unfortunately, polls are simplistic. I mean, if we had multiple choice, people would take both. So we end up nowhere. So let's see what people feel. It's still technology is 61%. So I think it's the COVID that has probably swung the balance that side.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, even our meeting today, instead of meeting on a panel discussion in India Habitat Center, we're meeting on a Zoom webinar. So that's technology for you.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, Sonali, I'd like to take you to take a question now. I wanted to ask you, what do you see the larger role and responsibility of an architect designer in a post-pandemic era?
So I think, in my opinion, there are so many different issues to address, but I first want to address the most painful one, which is that of the situation of the migrants. Okay, I feel that in India, with the large nation that we are, there was one huge oversight in all our planning policy so far, which is our Indianness, our family values, our culture. Now, in all our large cities, 50% or 40% of the population, like in Delhi, 40% of the population is migrant. In Mumbai, it's more than 50%. Okay, these people are people who are site laborers, they are various kinds of handymen, restaurant service, blah, blah, the list is endless. They live this 2 days, 3 days away from their homes, travel distance. They go home once a year. So there are those many young people growing up in this nation without mostly a father figure present or visible once a year. So we did not think how this nation has to grow. Being the youngest nation in the world, we have created a planning situation whereby a project is conceived. Nation building is not conceived. You know, there needs to be a master plan for nation building. Why do people have to travel 2 days to get work? Why does somebody from Bihar go to Bangalore to work? There has to be a decentralized urban plan, urbanization plan for the youngest nation of the country, whereby this mass migration and growth of families without one of their parents available to them is something that absolutely should not be happening. There need to be like 500 mini cities where people migrate to, where they can go back home on weekends, where they can meet their families. And the growth map has to be like that. It doesn't have to be that all the money is centered in Mumbai and therefore all the people migrate to Mumbai. So as urban designers, there has to be, and right now there's a very large gap between policies that are designed within the government and urban designers that work outside the government. Okay, there is no meeting, there is no synergy. So the act of nation building cannot be like that. So I think what the pandemic has brought home to me is that we need to design the growth of this nation differently. It's not going to come by just saying put a sanitizer and UV light at your entrance. That cannot be the only learning. It cannot be that you sit 1.8 meters away from the next person in your office. Those are kind of immediate knee-jerk kind of reactions for your own safety. But you're not safe as a nation if 40-50% of the nation has to be running around in trays and buses and scrambling every time there is a crisis.
But Sonali, what is the role of a designer in this? I mean, what is we as a design fraternity, what can we do about it?
It is absolutely the role of an urban designer and a town planner. And this policy of how a nation grows needs to be spearheaded by architects and urban designers and only implemented by the government administrators. Right now, it happens in reverse.
Yes, I agree with you on that one. Definitely.
I mean, right now, you look at a Central Vista project. It is being conceived by an administrator and designed by an architect. It needs to be, if it was required in this city, it needed to be conceived by an urban designer and an architect, and then the administrator would have played a role in getting it executed.
Central Vista is something I'm definitely not going to get Sunita started on, because then we're going to
Don't get me started. I don't know why I brought it up. I can speak for 5 hours on the issue.
I know. Both of you can.
No, it's but I'm glad that Sonali mentioned it, because, and in conjunction with COVID-19, well, separately on its own, I think the redevelopment of the Central Vista has not gone through, has not been conceived, is ill-conceived, to put it very boldly, because I think we needed to have a much larger deliberations, which involved many from the community of urban planners and of architects, and I mean, all these shortcuts that seem to have been taken arbitrarily and very quickly should not have happened. After all, let us see, what is New Delhi? New Delhi was going to become a World Heritage City till a couple of months before it was just removed. And it is, and why should that have happened? We don't know.
For this project?
But the fact is,
For
Sorry?
this project?
Well, because they must have, in their wisdom, known that this project is going to be coming about. So they didn't want to have it as give it the status of a World Heritage City. But it is the few cities in the world which have been planned as a garden city. I mean, it's quite unique in its own way. And then you cannot fault what Lachins did say in Rashtrapati Bhavan, or Baker did in North and South Block, because at the end, and Parliament Building, and Sir Roberto Russell did most of the bungalows that are there, plus Western Court, Eastern Court. So they were actually deeply influenced by what they saw in India, whatever remarks they might have made earlier. But the fact of the matter is, when you have major architectural historians calling it a double magnificence, because it took the best of the East and the best of the West. And so in a way, if you look at Rashtrapati Bhavan with its Sanchi dome, its chhajjas, its chhatris, its motifs, whether it's the snake, whether it is which are the elephants, it's a different matter that Lachins did not acknowledge that he took the elephant straight from the Lahori Gate at the Red Fort, which is a Mughal building. But maybe that was a colonial mindset, where you could acknowledge what you took from the Vatican, which is like in India Gate, the huge corns that are placed there. He took that from the Vatican, which he acknowledged that he had taken from there. But what I think is that the greatest crime that is being done to the heritage of a city is when a city has been planned with public spaces and then you remove 86 or 87 acres from the use of the common person and put it within you again build a wall around it for the use of government. So I think, firstly, I think as a concept, that to have conceived doing this in the manner that it leaves much to be said, and I leave it to the judgment of the morality and the ethics of the architects involved, whether they should have been involved in this or not, or whether they should have better advised the government that this should not be done. Secondly, India is facing the largest humanitarian tragedy in the world. Yes, we have controlled COVID-19, but we have the largest humanitarian tragedy in the world.
Yes.
And at a time like this, you're taking out these monies of starting with 20,000 crores and you're just putting it into a project which is not necessary. Yes, you can later on think of you want to bring down Shastri Bhavan or, some of the bhavans that came up in the 1950s, which the world over were not the best part of architectural history because it was post the Second World War. So why not have these huge, debates with everybody, put it out into the public domain that this is what we want to do. We invite urban planners, we invite architects.
Absolutely.
You can't leave it to the vision of one person. His might have been the most sober, maybe out of those horrific plans that were presented. They're all in the public domain. But who is one person or in fact, who is one government to mess around with what is our heritage?
So I'd like to add to what you're saying is that, it's not every day that a great nation builds its capital. Okay.
Yes.
So firstly, I'm going to leave aside the wisdom that whether we need this new capital to be built. So I'll leave aside that for a moment. I believe that, one of the reasons that I returned from England to India was that I found that in the 80s, 90s, somehow while great architecture was going on in India, Indian voices were not heard globally. And, with the exception of maybe late Sri Charles Correa, maybe a little bit Sri Doshi, there was not much of a debate or discourse going on. And I wanted to come back to India and look at this newly opened economy where we could be part of a global discourse and exchange of ideas, design, and conversation. Then I find that today we are building a nation, a capital of this great nation, and the world is going to look towards India. Okay, and what are we doing? Instead of following any stakeholder involvement, any processes that require for input, we are going to do one so-called competition, present the world with one idea, and it's kind of starting, the reverse, like a date gets decided, and in reverse, at a crazy kind of speed, a project gets put together. Is that how one builds a nation? Is that how we want the whole world to be looking at us? Here we are debating vernacular, technology, urban context, history, but people, and architecture and design are a community collaborative profession, as we all know. We can't build one building without requiring an architect, engineer, landscape architect, policy maker. Now even bank finance also plays a role in it, market studies, XYZ, endless traffic, sustainability. Now, these things, right, you may do a competition, but at the end, all this team should come together and inspire the project. But in the kind of time frame, 2 years, people can't build a little house in 2 years. How are these processes of stakeholder involvement? So my biggest grouse is they are things, when you do something and just present it to somebody, then you're presenting it. You're not taking input. So,
no, you're not. And also, Sonali, this is not the first time things like this have happened. I go back many years. Somebody like me, because I was working on the sort of projects which are on Raisina Hill. So one knew the paths that were, because I was presenting directly to the president or directly to a prime minister, whatever it was. It took me 15 to 17 years, with of course a lot of help from other people, to have Rashtrapati Bhavan and this complex declared national heritage buildings, because bureaucrats were not willing to do it because they felt they would lose some sort of control over it. And it took that long to have it because they were not more than 100 years old. So, we have to change so many things. And sometimes, the political bosses don't even know what is happening down below. And those are the sort of people like you and I in any project where government is involved need to, will always work on. After all, these are not private things that we have done. Of course, though.
In many places in the world, if you want to talk about best practices, actually any major building, leave alone public buildings, the plans are put up in public domain for a long period of time, all public interest is heard. Okay, so I just wish that if this was to be done, there would be a larger stakeholder involvement, more intellectual bandwidth within provided to the project with the kind of experts available to us in this country. And right now, of course, I don't see how even one person would think that this is the right direction for us to move post-pandemic.
I think so, because I think there is something almost, I hate to use the word, almost immoral and unethical to even think that you've spoken about this great tragedy, we're all aware of it. We are privileged. You and I are educated, we are living in our own homes. But there is such a huge human tragedy which is occurring. And to think of pushing forward projects like this, I think there's something not right in our way of thinking. And I just hope that better sense will prevail. And to that, I also want to add that, this whole thing that I see of getting architects from abroad to I don't know whether there'll be time to show the last few slides, but there's a house that I've done, a very contemporary house, because I have a contemporary mindset, though I've been working for 50 years. It's a very contemporary house. They got an architect from Singapore to do it. And I just thought, and I did the interiors. Actually, the house is known for its interiors. If there was ever time, you would see it. But
I'd love to see it, Hemant, if it could be shown.
You can run the slides. Rishu, can you run the slides? Okay. But anyway, because we were going to ask Sunita about her craft, which is something that she specializes in. So, Sunita, please carry on and we run the slides simultaneously.
Okay, this is Bhubaneswar, a hotel I did very early on for the Oberois, and where it used the great craft skills of stone carving. And in fact, the person who I discovered then, I found him, he only had 2 people working for him, Raghunath Mahapatra. Now he's got a Padma Vibhushan in 2015. The only master craftsman in India to have got a Padma Vibhushan. So I'm glad I found him. This is, the building in the Parliament building in Bhutan, where again I used several crafts that belong only to Bhutan and which are particular to Bhutan, and somehow incorporated them into whatever one was, whether it was the National Assembly Hall or the entrances. We can move on to the next slides so that we do it quick. And, making the Bhutanese flag carved in high relief in wood, using their craft traditions, all the paintings. I worked with several painters. I worked with several master craftsmen. This is the assembly hall, and what you see are the windows. These windows are always only used outside a Bhutanese building. So I was the first designer who brought them in as an architectural element because I needed to house the simultaneous translators. So, and now that has become, this was the first of its type, and now you see it often being used in Bhutan. And then, the ceiling above where I worked with the national, the Lama who was the director, because, they are so precise in what their motifs are. And I wanted to put these paintings above so that, because a mandala above signifies that it bestows blessings on those below. And this was a restoration of a 250-year-old fort I did for Mr. Oberoi. And here it had nothing in it. I'm sorry, I happened to be in that picture. I couldn't find another one, this is at Agra Fort. This is low relief marble fountain, which I had absolutely and completely duplicated. And in this Naila Fort, why I showed it was that earlier, wherever you saw Pietra Dura work in Agra was all on, tabletops and little chess boards and things like this. But inside, where there are 3 courtyards and a smaller one inside, there is the most exquisite Pietra Dura work. So I brought back that work, which was used architecturally only the way it should be used, and not for little decorative boxes and, chess boards and things like this. I think we can. So this is just, I couldn't find very many pictures so quickly. So this is just one of the pictures showing a little Pietra Dura. And if we go, and this is a perspective, but I couldn't find the photograph. But the reason why I showed it is this is El Arish, which is on the north coast of the Mediterranean, very close to Jerusalem. And here I saw what it was that Egypt does. They have a tradition of making baladi glass from the 8th century. So I used those craftsmen, and I got the trunks of these, El Arish is full of date palms. And I used an actual date palm as a dye for these huge date palm trees that were done. So I like to work with the crafts that belong to a particular place, so it makes it culturally specific. This is a contemporary house one had done in 2004, 2005. And this is the one designed by Sonali. This is the one designed by the Singaporean architect. I mean, there's nothing wrong with him. But why did they require somebody to come from Singapore? We have such great architects here. They could have done the same thing. Of course, I added all the, if you go back, I added all the line of granite temples, which are taken from an actual one, which is a tank temple, and all the bronze lotus leaves are again done by Radhakrishnan, another great bronze maker. So one uses in a very contemporary context. I personally like to ground it in an Indian context. This is the inside, which I mean, there's a great collection of art in this house. Furniture is, of course, all handmade from my own workshops. There are things that were imported from Italy for it. But the ceilings, if you notice, it's an old technique of doing chadhawing work on gold and silver work. And to kind of, this became a visual form of our great Ganga Jamuni Tehzeeb. And whether somebody got it or not, I wanted to have this, which was one of our great secular traditions.
Wonderful. Amazing. The work is absolutely amazing, Sunita. No wonder 50 years of a body of work that is outstanding, absolutely.
Thank you.
And Sonali, now to close, the last question to you. I wanted to ask you about, since you do a lot of urban design also and master planning and things like that, how after the COVID, because COVID is very important, it's something that's dominating our thought process right now. So thanks to COVID, what change do you see in the way we design generally? We plan our cities and experience our built environment.
So, during the COVID time, when I started to rethink about what would I have done differently in some of my work. And some seem to have some natural things that would work even better in COVID times, where people needed a certain amount of social segregation. Though I have to admit, I mean, throughout my entire career so far, it has been about social amalgamation. And now I have to suddenly start thinking about segregation. Having said that, this particular project that you see, Grand Carmen in Bangalore, it could be one of many other types of housing communities. It's essentially all IT young families. But in this particular project, it was because there were a lot of children and the age group was very young. We completely pedestrianized. It's 100% pedestrian complex of houses and over 500 houses, I think. And we completely did grade separation where every outsider arrives at a very ventilated, very daylit basement level, which is this. Okay, and every house has an entry from the basement and every outsider to the project has to come from the basement. And then only if a house owner lets them up through their house do they actually ever access the ground. So that time it was done for children's safety, which could roam freely in the entire complex where both parents were doing 10-hour shifts in some, Wipro or Infosys or something. Today, I find that this is an absolutely phenomenal way for a community to safeguard itself in the current situation. So that's why this is a very old project of mine, but that's why I put these slides here. Another project that came to mind was Surat diamond boards. These are just more clubhouses, images of the same project. It was a very low-cost, young family homes, which were designed for a lot for children and community living, actually. This is the project Surat Diamond Board which came to mind because this was a global competition that we won. And this is the world's largest single building. For those of you who don't know, currently it's the Pentagon. This is due to finish in 15 months and this will be the world's largest building. Now, this is the pride of the diamond merchants of actually Saurashtra, starting from Surat all the way to Mumbai. And what you see an image here, this is radiant cooling. So radiant cooling, which is typically a underfloor cooling technique used in many places in the world, we've actually cooled all the non-air conditioned corridors. So all of us know these typical Indian buildings, schools, colleges, especially where corridors are not air conditioned. Now we have radiant cooling in the corridors, and 50% of this area, which is larger than most airports, is actually not air conditioned, but conditioned, microclimate conditioned through this radiant cooling installation. And this building is 70 lakh square feet single building. Greenery and green lungs are through the project. So today we are telling people that meet outside, keep your windows open, get ventilated. Actually, 100% of the circulation area of this project is non-air conditioned and totally ventilated. There are a lot of vertical air shafts created because hot air, as we know, rises. So there is a horizontal and vertical air movement. The entire circulation, as you can see in this early sketch when the project, this is a sketch from the competition actually. And a lot of the corridor breaks out into gardens. And this is the project, this image is from about a year ago, project under construction. Whilst it's a lot of buildings, because there was this diamond trading community, almost 95% of all diamonds in the world, entirely or in part, will go through this building once the building is finished. Okay, so there's a lot of office space, but if you notice, it's all designed around courtyards because there's a lot of this particular community deals a lot with little pottery of diamonds here, there, meet in the courtyard, eat a meal, exchange, do some trading, and so there's a lot of outdoor living, which I feel now that as an office complex, this amount of outdoor living is going to be a success in the COVID times. The other reason which we emphasized on during the competition, which later the client told us was one of the reasons for winning, was we said that if these many people are going to enter this complex, this is 70 lakh square feet. And if you calculate it at even one person per 100 square feet, look at the number of people. Now, these many people have to enter and reach their office space in under 7 minutes. Okay, so we worked on how to do it without overcrowding. Okay, and how the entire movement is in one direction so that you don't have these thousands of people running across like this at the time they have to go to different offices. Today, somehow that is a recommendation that you move only in one direction. Okay, somehow that is so outdoor living, outdoor working, and this moving in one direction. Thinking like people think about movement of people only in airports. That these are the number of people, you do the statistics, you figure the demographics when you design an airport, but people don't do it in large buildings. But actually large buildings are not that different. So we did a large amount of understanding of the culture of the people who use it and the demographics and the amount of time that should be spent without overcrowding and no cross traffic. So somehow the building seems to be already designed for this kind of what is advocated today. So
it's very impressive.
Thank
very
you.
impressive. I really
Sonali,
look
it
forward
seems
to
many years ago you were designing for COVID.
It wasn't COVID, it was people. We were designing for how people should move. When you have a large number of people, if they move in every direction, it creates chaos. I mean, as some of the people on this talk have probably been involved in the interior design of an airport at some point. I mean, at airport, you think about that you just always move in the same direction. You don't go backwards and forwards. Okay. I don't know why people don't think about the direction you must move in when there are a lot of people. But that's what we thought about when this project was being made.
But Sonali, if I might interject, it's not only in large buildings that perambulatory paths must be preconceived in the mind of the designer or the architect.
Yeah.
Because even in a large home, you have to know within, say, a 40,000 square foot home. Unfortunately, people do build, or fortunately, build homes of that scale. You have to know how the movement is taking place. Where people are. So wherever people are, you must design their perambulatory paths and see where everybody is going. So I think, micro scale, macro scale, there are so many defined type of, what should I say, that the parameters are the same. I mean, the extent might differ, but I think your building is fabulous, and I think it's already set itself. I hope it'll become a huge role model, because as you know, in India, what we really lack in architecture here, and I think that is changing rapidly, is architects like you and few others who are going to change the respect that Indian architects have today for themselves. Otherwise, everybody has been going and trying to cog something from the West. That is not the way. I mean, you see all the big buildings that have come up, Gurgaon for one. Everything is a copy of something. Nobody's trying to think from within that what it is. Maybe clients, show them things and they say that this is what we want. And yes, there must be some architects who agree to it, because otherwise they feel that they will lose the commission. वो भी बहुत होता है. But अब जो नई काबिलियत दिखलाई दे रही है in the architects of your generation, a slightly younger generation, I think it's going to change the architectural face of India. Because so far, we look at our hill stations, I mean, we only know how to create slums, because there is no urban planning, there are no rules, nothing is to be adhered to. All this must change. Where should it change from? I think, people's voices, with the government. Without government, you can't do anything. I mean, that's for sure. So all this has to come together in the best possible way, because our time is finite. I speak for myself. My time is finite. But what is it that you're going to leave behind? I think, that is what we must think of. Are we going to leave the urban landscape a better place to live in, or stalemated, or having become worse? And I think these are questions we all need to ask ourselves.
Thank you so much. It's been amazing. We are still a little bit of time left to take in a couple of audience questions, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
Sure.
We have a lot of them. In fact, one of the major comments that we are getting from multiple people is that can we have one more session with Sunita ma'am and Sonali ma'am, because 1 hour is not enough for us. So we shall keep that in mind and try to catch you once again. But one
Right.
important question that's come out from a lot of the questions that we've received is, this is for both of you. How should the design fraternity, and especially you two, how are you rethinking sustainability and architecture for the new normal?
Sonali, you go ahead with this. You just spoken about it. You just continue with
Yeah,
it.
so just carry on from what you were speaking.
Yes.
We at Morphogenesis have a philosophy which we have worked on and which we have evolved. And the acronym we have for it is SOUL, SOUL. That every project has to be looked at for sustainability, has to be optimized for the result it wants to achieve, has to be unique because it has to be derived out of its past, present, and future aspiration. And every location has its history, has its vernacular, has its people, has its arts and crafts, has its aspiration of the modern Indian. And finally, it must be livable. Finally, it must be livable. And what do we define as livable? And obviously, in the post-pandemic, there are a couple of more factors that have got added to livable. Okay, so for me, that criteria doesn't change, which is at the foundation of every work that I do. So yes, but it's not a static principle. It's not that one sustainability is the same for every building. It's not that one unique is the same for every unique. So I don't believe in an architect's signature style. I believe in inquiry from first principles, based on the fundamentals of sustainability, optimization, unique and livable. And then the end result is a collaborative process of design thinking with the group of designers, engineers, architects, landscape architects that work upon it. And so therefore, in some ways, I haven't had to reorient my mind. Just the parameters that influence soul for me some will get deleted, some will get added.
I think that's a wonderful acronym. And I fully endorse what you're saying, because even for somebody like me, I mean, if the question was addressed, I wouldn't do things differently, because we've always taken care to bring in what is sustainable into it, whether it is how do you bring in fresh air. You don't need air purifiers to be running the whole day in a very large home even, there is so much but there is so much I think that we will add on to how we do it, because I think the inside outside we design small spaces, large spaces, and an FAR is small, balconies are being brought in, etc. I don't think that's the way to go ahead. And this COVID-19 and the pandemic has taught us that the outside has an equally important part to play as much as the inside. Actually, the greatest designer is nature. So to be able to look out at that, I think that's a great privilege.
Well, thank you very much. We're getting even more requests for, they say it's an injustice that 1 hour is not enough for two legends. So they want 1 hour per legend. So we probably
Thank you. Thank you.
This.
Thank
Thank you so much, Sonali and Sunita. Thank you so much for taking the time out. I know you people are busy now that lockdowns are opening and your offices are restarting and everyone's trying to get their acts together once again. Thank you for taking time out. And
actually, that requires rethinking how we are going to run our studios, how we are going to run our workshops, since I manufacture. That is going to require major rethinking.
So maybe we'll have another webinar on that one.
Thank you. Thank you, Sonali. It was wonderful speaking with you.
It's an honor to speak.
No, my privilege. Absolutely.
Thank
and
you
it's
both of you
wonderful. I
for,
love chatting
for
with
coming on this webinar and supporting IIID. In fact, both of you have been very kind. Whenever we've asked you for almost anything, it's always been a
Thank
very
you.
positive step from your side.
Thank you,
And
Hemant.
thank you,
Thank you, Hemant, for
Sunita. Thank you, Sonali.
organizing this. I think it's a wonderful opportunity. And it's a wonderful opportunity to chat with you, chat with Sonali. So goodbye, I guess.
Always a pleasure. And I'll just now do my formal vote of thanks because I have my other 6 chapters to thank. So thank you to
Yes.
Goa, Jaipur, Mumbai, Chandigarh, Mangalore, and Coimbatore chapters for supporting us. Thank you for bringing attendees in great numbers. And to the audience, I would like to say, please send us your questions. Please send us topics that you would like to see in future. Please send us requests for more speakers, including repeating the 2 of them again. And we'd love to organize that. And we're having many more. We have 1 more webinar in May, and then 5 more months of 5 or 6 webinars each. So that's another 31 webinars to go. So we have a long series planned in front. So I'm sure you'll see both the great ladies once again. Maybe a little later, but definitely they'll be there. And Vishu, before we close and people say goodbye on the chat, can you run the Webspun video once again with sound, please? And thank you once again, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Let me shut this.
Today, Wellspun Group takes pride in being one of the world's largest home textile manufacturers and large diameter pipe makers, and finds a place on India's Fortune 500 list too. All thanks to creating category-defining products. And we aim to replicate that in flooring through Wellspun Flooring. Just the thought of dust, noise, mess, and the time it takes to change floors, along with the lack of exciting designs, forced people to resist a change in flooring. Not anymore. Wellspun Flooring has introduced innovative products with new age, personalized, and exciting designs. So be it a new space or an old floor, we are all about change made easy. We have our innovative products to speak for us. Wellspun Flooring's click and lock tiles, with their unique click and lock technology, are a revolution in the flooring segment. For those looking for comfort of carpets in a convenient tile form, our carpet tiles are the right fit. If people want flooring with a seamless charm, they don't have to look any further than our wall-to-wall carpets. Or if they wish for something that looks like real grass, or even better, greens is what we have for them. And with our path-breaking fusion floors, customers can turn designers by mixing and matching products and designs. Get set for a revolution in flooring with Wellspun Flooring.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and goodbye. And we'll see you at the next webinar very soon. Thank you.
Bye. Bye, Hemant. Bye, Sonali. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Take care.